This is Jacqueline Bryan, Public Relations Officer at the National Emergency Management Agency, affectionately called NEMA. We are here at the St. Kitts Marriott Resort, where the 13th Caribbean Conference on Comprehensive Disaster Management, also called CDM13, is taking place. We have scheduled interviews with persons who have done research and have presented them here at the conference, and key individuals who were members of panels on serious topics where they were discussing critical issues moving forward. For this interview, so we're calling this NEMA CDM13 Table Talks. And for this interview, I'm joined by Lieutenant Colonel Jeffery Forde. He is the Director of Operations and Plans with the Regional Security System, also known as the RSS. And I know that in St. Kitts and Nevis, we are quite familiar with the RSS. Thank you so much for agreeing to have this discussion with me. How are
Thank
you?
you very much.
You good?
Very much. Yes, I'm grateful.
Oh, fantastic. I'm grateful you're here. So, how long have you been with the RSS?
I've been with the RSS full-time now for 13 years. Firstly, I was a member of the Barbados Defense Force. I did 25 years service. And during my service with the Barbados Defense Force, I was working with the RSS after 3 years of its inception. So although 13 years full-time, I've been with the RSS now for over 30 years.
Wow. So that's a very long time to have been with an institution and full time with them over a decade. So clearly you have experienced some things.
Yes, ma'am.
And hopefully we hope to learn about that a little later on. But you were a panelist on a discussion centered around Beyond Boundaries, transforming regional resilience in a multi-hazard, multi-island Caribbean. And that was a very important discussion. Give us some of the insights and takeaways from that discussion for you.
Yes. The regional security system, we normally respond in support of CDEMA, and we will deploy police officers, soldiers, and fire service personnel to assist a member state that is in need. And we are responsible for developing teams, not only for security, but also for humanitarian and disaster response. So we recognize over the years the challenges that we face operating in that type of environment. So the session was around the challenges and some recommendations going forward, given CDEMA's mandate looking 20 years out. Some of the challenges we face mainly are the environment now is much more complex. In the earlier decades, we will find that one or two islands may be impacted, but now we are finding that 3 or so islands are impacted at the same time. We had issues where 2 of our member states had to basically evacuate an island, Barbuda, and I think it was Dominica. Quite a few persons were evacuated back in 2017 as well. So things that we did in the past, we can no longer do, given the complex environment. Critical infrastructure is normally impacted as well. Prisons, back in 2017, again, the prisons were impacted. That was a concern for us, having very bad actors moving across, not only within the island, but across the region as well. So those are things that we have now to consider, not just the traditional response, but responding in a much more chaotic. And we had to respond during COVID as well, during the height of COVID, when the rest of the world did not know what it is that we are getting ourselves involved in. So we deployed to St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the aftermath of the Soufriere volcano, the eruption there. And it was the volcanic eruption itself, it was COVID, a storm was coming, we had hantavirus, we had chikungunya, and then we still had the bad actors still wanted to move their drugs throughout the region as well. So this is a new type of environment that we have to operate in. Then we have the challenge of strategic lift. How do we get persons from the various member states into a specific member state to assist them? You can imagine, for example, when we had the issue with St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the aircraft could not fly. And when we had the issue with Dominica back in 2017, we could not respond not until about 3 days afterwards because additional Category 5 storms were coming. Back then it was Irma, Maria, and Jose.
Yeah.
And if you can just imagine, you have a community, a country that needs assistance but could not get the assistance at the time that they would need to get it. So this is a new environment that we're operating in, and we have to find ways to see how we can operate within this type of environment. And those were the main issues coming out of that. One other thing which is very crucial, and which is being also discussed at the conference, is that of the psychosocial impact on our police and our soldiers. What CDEMA is doing, they are now looking at it as relates to the wider community. So one of our lessons coming out of 2017 as well is that we deploy a psychologist, we deploy a minister from time to time to go and visit the troops and to help them with their psychosocial support, because obviously they are impacted upon. And you're asking people to deploy, and they themselves, homes are impacted, and now their families are impacted as well, and they themselves don't know what is happening, and you're asking them to deploy to help someone else, and they are not able to even assist their own family. So we're looking after the psychosocial support of our police, military, and our fire service personnel.
And that's a very critical point. I'm happy you included it. And it brings, that's one of the important things about this conference, bringing all of these different experts and stakeholders and players from around the region to discuss these types of things, because it's a reality.
Yes.
You have separate islands. It's not one big landmass. There's water in between all of them, and you have different areas that could be impacted by different events at different times. And in the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, one territory that could be facing several events in close proximity to each other. And it creates, I could only imagine, a very, like you described it as chaotic sometimes, situation for your institution. So tell us a bit more about your role with CDEMA, which is the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency. I know you have a specific role with CDEMA when there's a disaster and deployment has to occur. Tell us about that.
Yes. A little bit more background as well. The RSS has a MOU with CDEMA in terms of supporting them in the time of disaster. In the earlier years, prior to CDEMA, there was a grouping called CDERA. They basically would have morphed into CDEMA. And what we did at RSS, we responded to island states that need assistance. And that's what we do at RSS. We support them in time of need. So coming out of that, that MOU between us would allow RSS to assist CDEMA in event of any hazard, not only in security related, but also support in terms of teams, in support of training, movement of equipment and personnel to impacted state. So my specific role at the RSS as it relates to CDEMA, response, I'm the person that is responsible for mobilizing personnel and resources using what we have to an impacted state. I have a young lady, a very, very bright young lady who works for me. She's our disaster humanitarian specialist. She's very, very instrumental in working with CDEMA in developing training for those teams that have to go in. We have a team called the Caribbean Disaster Relief Unit, and they're the ones that will go in to help with relief. When supplies comes into the that specific state, they would log all the information, make sure it goes to the right warehouse. They will go out and help in terms of the member state in distributing relief items. So that is one of my responsibilities as well. That's basically it. The soldiers and the police and the fire service, they're the ones that do all the hard work. I just bring them together and tell them, get there.
But how does it happen? Because I know we've had soldiers and police officers from St. Kitts and Nevis who have been a part of that response. And we also have a situation in which, and it ties into your last insight from the panel discussion. We have, for example, police officers here from Dominica, from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and they really are more concerned about their families and their properties in their home territories. So when RSS is trying to mobilize to respond, they really are wanting to be a part of it so they can get home to visit their families and see what's happening for themselves. So is it that you would bring all of them to Barbados first, then you have a briefing, or are they transported from the territory in which they are operating and working to the territory that needs the assistance? How does it happen?
Good question. It depends on the threat itself. Wherever possible, we like to bring everybody to one central location first, so that we can do our briefings. If we have to do any initial training, then we take them into the specific island that have been stricken. It all depends. Say, for example, if something happened in Antigua or here in St. Kitts, and it may be easier now for us to bring everybody to, say, Barbados, and then we move persons there. If we have one island that has been stricken in the middle, it'd be easier now to bring persons from the north to the middle and persons from the south to the middle as well. So it all dependent on the threat. We do training. We have an actual mobilization plan whereby everyone is aware of what the plan is and what they're supposed to do in the event of an emergency. We do exercises just to make sure that everyone is aware of their specific role. There is a regional exercise sponsored by the United States Southern Command called Exercise Trade Winds. Mm-hmm. So as part of that, we get to do a lot of training with each other. So that allows us to get to know each other, get to trust each other, so that when we do operate, we operate seamlessly, operating with the same standards, have the same training. There's no issue with a police in charge of military or military in charge of police, because of trust that we've built up over the years. And we like to continue that as well. And that is the big advantage we have in the RSS as opposed to the wider CARICOM, whereby police and military work seamlessly. There is no turf wars or anything like that between us. The main goal, obviously, and at all times, is who we are working for, and that is the people of the region.
So what's the largest team you've ever had to assemble? Can you give us some numbers?
I would say the largest team we have assembled is probably about 60. And then we will deploy them for a period of, I say the longest period that we've worked is probably about 4 months. We will deploy the persons for probably about 30 days at a time, having 3 or 4 rotations of between 30 to 60 persons. And getting volunteers is not a problem. No? Persons always want to help someone else because they recognize, today it's me, tomorrow it's them,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So it's no problem getting asking for persons. The problem is always the resources, and how do we get them there? How do we sustain them?
Yeah.
Yes.
Those are very important considerations. And that's a very big team that you would have to put together. And because of the way the region naturally is, there are just some natural challenges that come along with that. And you pointed them out earlier. So we're here at CDM13 talking about the road to resilience. And we've been hearing this word kicked around for quite some time, resilience. But we know that the disasters have been happening a little bit more frequently than we used to experience. So what do you think, as we wrap up, what would you like people to bear in mind? And what do you think the region really needs to act upon if we are to head along this road to resilience?
Well, as a military person, I would say leadership. When the persons are on the ground, you need someone that will know what they're doing, provide that leadership, so as to bring the community together. We will recognize, again, through deployments, when you go to an island and it's devastating, people are shell-shocked. They just do not know what to do. And you need leaders that can come in there and to assist persons in that regard. And as you mentioned, the environment now is much more chaotic. There's a lot of disorder. So you need strong leadership so as to bring persons together to get them to do something that they probably might not want to do, but still love it. And I know that is pretty hard. And I would say during the COVID experience, we saw that leadership coming out from our various prime ministers as well, in terms of coming together and dealing with the COVID-19 impact. So for me, leadership. When they deploy soldiers and police, both male and female, when they are on the ground, all they will do is just follow orders. But if we don't have proper leadership, if we don't have strong political leadership as well, we will have issues.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, not just for this interview, but for the work that you've been doing at the RSS. They have a very critical role there. I wouldn't want it. But I really appreciate how the region benefits from the work that the RSS is doing in conjunction with CDEMA. So
Thank you
in
very
case you
much.
don't hear it often, thank you.
And thank you as well.
So-
Thanks to the region.
Yes. So Lieutenant Colonel Jeffery Forde, he's the Director of Operations and Plans with the Regional Security System, also called RSS, which is based in Barbados. And we're here at CDM13, and he was our guest for this edition of Nema Table Talks at CDM13. I am Jacqueline Bryan, Public Relations Officer at Nema, and I was your host. Thanks for joining.